rules, like,
tied to the
if you drink
dock,
tap beer,
not here.
and a glass of beer is 5 points, as
On
long
this
as you
side,
never let it go
this
up, and you
will
keep
go
refilling
on.
it, it's only one glass.
It's only one.
We want it to go, I just don't know with her leaving.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna work.
Okay. Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2013. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes. Mr. Brado? Here. Mr. Capral?
Here.
Mr. Swikowski?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Verkest?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of May 13th, 2013, approval of the bills in the amount of $692,177.16, approval of the April 2013 revenue and expenditure report, and to concur with the water and sewer superintendent to repair the Jeffers Court storm pump in the amount of $3,997 with A&C Electric Company.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We've got a motion by Mr. York, support by Mr. Tominello.
Swikowski?
Mr. Swakowski?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I misheard, sorry. All right, discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, there is an emergency agenda item. I would like to bring that as early in the agenda as possible so that Mr. Newmer wouldn't have to wait. He's our engineer and may speak to it. I don't know if we could make that B1 and then move B1 to B2 if that's acceptable.
Well, before we decide on that, I'm just gonna say for the record that this is was $50,000, it's now $64,000. Getting it a minute before the board meeting starts, I don't know how I could possibly vote yes on a $64,000 item.
I think that's a fair statement, and it
And-
may be
and-
that
and
the
I-
board might decide not to
Well, that's why I'm
vote.
bringing it up right now.
I understand.
Why have an hour discussion if, doing it twice? If the board agrees with that and move it to the next meeting, then that's fine. If they choose to hear it now, then that's fine too. That's why I'm bringing it up right now, because so many times we discuss something just to bring it at the next meeting. And I will say one thing about this quote. I would certainly like to see what this breakdown is, the $64,000, what that breakdown is, because, you go to the back and it has the pricing for the software packages. It'd be nice to know that, it's $5,000 for servers, $2,000 for this, $5,000 for that, $40,000 for labor, what this includes.
We're sort of talking about the item, not whether or not
Right.
to add.
I
It's
would
sort of
really
off
like to,
topic.
let me
And
say,
I
Mr.
understand that.
York, if I may, I would like to address those things as an agenda item, and I'm not certain that it's reasonable to ask this board to act. As of Tuesday of this week, we had some serious concerns. It's a week later now, and we may not need to act on this today, but I do believe it's something we're gonna have to act on in the near future. And I
about
would,
that.
and I would like to bring this to the board, and the board may choose to give me some direction on what to do next. But I can't get that direction unless I bring it to this board and basically discuss or deliberate the subject. That's the reason why I added it to the agenda. And although I know it's certainly highly unusual that I would bring numbers right at the end of the meeting or right prior to the beginning of the meeting, that wasn't something intentional. I understand your concerns, and I believe we can address them as an agenda item.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to amend the regular agenda with the proposed emergency addendum item, the SCADA system as proposed.
All right.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. Capral. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is announcements. I do have a few announcements. First of all, I'd like to extend a big thanks to Channel 95.5 and Mojo in the Morning and their crew for coming out to Lake St. Clair Metro Park this past Friday. They did a remote broadcast from 6 to 10 a.m. Featuring Harrison Township. And I'd also like to thank the many businesses and residents that came out. The band was there, the choir was there. It was a little early in the morning, but it was a nice showcase for Harrison Township. And again, thanks to the radio program for giving our community a little spotlight. Also upcoming, Anthony Morocco's Clinton River Canoe Classic. It's a professional canoe race, the first ever that we know of on the Clinton River. It's scheduled for Sunday, June 2nd, this coming Sunday. It's going to start from downtown Mount Clemens. It's going to travel from Mount Clemens into both Harrison and Clinton Townships. They have basically extended this race to a sanctioned body of professional canoe racers. But it should be a pretty interesting event, and that's this Sunday, June 2nd. This event and all the others that we'll talk about here, of course, are featured on the township website, harrison-township.org. Also, we've got the Historical Commission building dedication scheduled for June 8th at 1 p.m. We're going to cut the ribbon, and I know sometimes Ms. Karczewski from the Historical Commission comes to speak about it. But in her absence, we'll just let everyone know that dedicating the old town hall on June 8th, it's a Saturday at 1 p.m. Also, upcoming is the annual fishing derby. Mr. Capral?
Yes, the Parks and Recreation Committee is hosting its annual fishing derby. It'll be held on June 8th, which is a Saturday.
Ready?
You guys ready? All right. Board members, I'd be looking for a motion to reconvene at, appears to be about 7:12, 7:13 p.m.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been motioned and supported to, or moved and supported to reconvene at 7:13. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We had a slight interruption, power surge, and the broadcast went down, so we suspended the meeting until we were able to put it back on cable. And unfortunately, it came right in the middle of Mr. Capral's presentation on the fishing derby.
All right, we'll start over again. Parks and Rec is hosting their annual fishing derby, which is June 8th at Lake St. Clair Metro Beach. And starting time is 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we have prizes, hot dogs, drinks, in different age categories, anywhere from, I believe it's 6 years old till up until 16 years old, and we have 3 different classifications. So I'd like to see everybody come out, and it's a free fishing weekend, so you don't need a license for this particular day. And all you have to pay is the park entrance fee. And we do sell park passes at the township offices if you want to grab one at a discounted rate. So, I'd like to see everybody out there.
All right, good. It's always been a pretty good event, so
For those that don't, we are still selling the passes, the discounted passes for residents on Metro Beach for $17.
Also, a summary of a meeting that I had today. Mr. Chris is a representative from DTE. He had scheduled an appointment just to update the board and our residents regarding some work that DTE has taken on in our area. Throughout the summer months of 2013, DTE Energy is adding circuits and what I would call redundancy. The term he used was sectionalizing circuits to avoid outages. So if we were to take a section of service that might service 1,000 homes, when that goes down, those folks are without power. They're looking to sort of cross-feed that or just break that up into thirds, and in the event that there is a loss on any part of that stretch, at least 2/3 of the people would continue to be serviced. So the total estimate of investment in circuits and wiring and additional power lines is just short of $670,000 of an investment in the infrastructure in our community and in the circuits that service our community and neighboring communities. So thanks to DTE Energy for making an investment in our community.
Should have made it before the power just went out.
Yeah, well, see, it shows the need.
Yeah, tell them this circuit over here on this pole needs to be
Yeah.
on that list.
Yeah. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move forward on the agenda to item B1. As we discussed, this was an emergency item, basically addressing our SCADA system. For those that are not familiar, SCADA is an acronym, kind of what I'd call an industrial acronym. It's not necessarily dedicated to only dealing with municipal water and sewer systems, but it's a system of monitoring industrial systems, whether it be pumps, tanks, different types of things that can be measured and flowed and analyzed. And it's not unique, again, to municipal environment. I was approached about 2 months ago by our water and sewer superintendent and our township engineer to discuss our current SCADA system and some of the problems with the SCADA system. They had identified some shortage of service or some of the functions that are no longer working, and they said that as a result of that, they would be bringing forward a proposal to upgrade our SCADA system, but in essence, we had a little bit of time. So they said, look for it in 2013. Our current water and sewer SCADA system is about 7 years old, or it was updated, we'll say, 7 years ago. The system, in essence, is comprised of a series of devices that can measure flow, measure volume of pump stations, measure whether pumps are cycling or not, whether the hatch is open or closed, different things like that. Then it takes that information, utilizing simple radio technology, sends out a radio broadcast, not unlike a CB radio, although a different frequency, to an antenna at a central location where it's fed into a computer, and then the computer, in essence, monitors all those things. The server has gone down this month twice in 10 days, just prior to last Tuesday. Once the server goes down, which may not, as Mr. York pointed out, may not be a product of the server itself, could be a combination of the software and several other things. It requires a reboot process and a checking of several of the stations, which takes approximately 3 to 3.5 hours. During the time that we're getting that monitoring system back up to full operating capacity, we are not monitoring our sewer pump stations. And as the board knows, and I'm sure some residents know, our township is so flat and it's so basically close to sea level or to the water level, we don't have the advantage of elevation to allow our entire sewer system to gravity feed. So both for our storm sewers, the rain that falls in our streets, and of course for our sanitary sewers, which is what we typically associate with our sewer system, we have to allow that water or those liquids to flow to a low spot, collect them, lift them in a lift station, and then allow them to gravity feed, or in some cases, utilize a force main or a pipe where we force the sewer to another location. In the event that any of those pumps fail and within our infrastructure, sewer fluids continue to flow into the system. If they're not pumped out of the system, the effective level within the system rises, which can lead to flooding or backups into basements. So it's important that we have a functioning SCADA system. The failures that we experienced over the last 10 days leading up to the assembly of this agenda gave us cause for concern, and through the experts that basically service our SCADA system said, you know, we're not sure how much longer the system is going to remain stable. We have some genuine concerns about this system going forward. So because of that, we felt the need to push this issue forward and bring it to the board. There are new servers and software that will allow for a greater detail in monitoring, as well as redundancy. The newer systems and software allow for remote monitoring. You can access with a smartphone, so that the folks within our water and sewer department that are responsible for it, when they get an error code, they can literally access the system, look to see what the problems are, if there are alarms that need to be reset, and so forth. There are things that can be done remotely. The broadcast equipment is fine, but it's the software and the server that we have some concerns with. Now, since the two failures within a 10-day span, we've gone a week and we haven't had a failure in the system. And frankly, we don't know whether we're going to go another 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months before we experience a similar shutdown. But historically, we'd never received a shutdown or a failure of the system twice in such a short span. So because of that, we accelerated the timing of addressing this problem, bringing it to the board. The system that we have is from, is it Westerlake? Westerman, thank you. Was purchased about 7 years ago, and there was a time when it was maybe a cutting-edge software. The township throughout the years has experienced some difficulties in contracting with Westerman to service the equipment and to get them out to take a look at things and to address some of the problems. Basically, the software is old. In talking to some of our neighboring communities, we found that some of them that have Westerman systems are experiencing some of the same problems. I know Dave might address an issue in Clinton Township where they made an investment similar to ours back in 2001. As recently as 2009, they'd invested upwards of another $250,000 into the system. They're experiencing very much the same types of failures and lack of alarm codes that we have. For approximately the last 3 years, we've worked with an IT professional from ICS Integration, and they've helped us both in terms of working with our current system, as well as bringing the new storage tank online and working with the controls on that. And then you might recall that most recently, I don't know if it was maybe 2 or 3 board meetings ago, Dave Axtell, our water and sewer superintendent, brought forth a proposal to spend a few $1,000s to have ICS work with our field personnel on a spectrum analysis, re-aiming and adjusting our antennas and our radios to better improve the communication from station to station. Some stations were only catching signals about 25% of the time, or broadcasting, or they were only being received. They were able to get that number up to 95%. So we've established a certain level of confidence over roughly the last 3 years in this service provider and his ability to work with our system. When we ran into these problems, we asked him what he would recommend, and he gave us a proposal. Unfortunately, that proposal coincided with a personal vacation that he had planned. He's just returning from that vacation at this time. So we'd spent a few days back and forth. I know Dave primarily has done most of that in talking to him about the system. So I have brought to you everything that we know today about this potentially new or replaced system. There's more than one system available that we could purchase to replace the existing system. By all measures, both from talking to the professionals we work with as well as neighboring communities, we believe that our current system has reached its limit. It may be good for another year, it may be good for another few weeks, but we're reaching the point where it's going to fail and we may not be able to bring it back up. And again, because it monitors all of our stations, this isn't the same kind of a product such as maybe, say, a pickup truck where you wait till it dies and you just go out and buy another one and hook up right where you left off. This system is going to take about 4 weeks to turn over, so we're running out of time. The problem is we just frankly don't know how much time we have. So last Tuesday, we were concerned that the time was short, so we went about the business of putting this on the agenda and bringing it before the board for consideration. Again, we've looked at different suppliers. There's two halves to this system. One half is hardware and software, and one half is the technical know-how to put it into place. So, for example, within the system that ICS has proposed, they've proposed 2 servers with redundancy so that in the event that one server goes down, it automatically switches over to the other server, avoiding a need for overtime or different things like that. Over the life of a system like this, you know, a few $1,000s of additional money directed toward a server probably more than pays for itself in the event that a hard drive fails or one of the simple mechanical components within that server were to fail. The software that he's proposing is a standard package of software. Ignition is the name of the software. It's not unique to the Water and Sewer Department. They've been around for about 12 years. The folks at ICS gave us several references, both in terms of municipal customers that use it for sewer systems, but also because it's a sort of a standardized or industry standard type product. He said companies anywhere from Coca-Cola, the Department of Defense, Dow Chemical, a lot of people within the industrial sector utilize this software. I don't know that it's a direct comparison, but I might compare it to something like Excel. Not every user of Excel uses it the same way, but it's a standardized kind of a software that can be used many different ways. We've reached the point from a technological standpoint that the concept of SCADA monitoring for our sewer systems is no longer high-tech. We're reaching the point where it's becoming simpler and simpler. 30 years ago, it was crazy technology. 30 years from now, you know, our grandchildren will be able to do it in their bedrooms with a PC. But we're reaching that point where the current program that we have is kind of old school, and this is something that we could look at that would improve the redundancy and the reliability. Problem is, number one, it's a significant cost. It's a significant purchase. The estimate's just above $64,000. Number two, because it is a product that we would consider purchasing based more on the technical recommendations of an expert as opposed to a simple commodity like a pickup truck or a gas-powered generator, it's not as easy to competitively quote. And then, of course, third, the very nature of bringing it before this board in a short period of time is obviously something that Mr. York's not comfortable with, and frankly, I'm not comfortable with it. So the reason why I asked to place this on the agenda is because I would like to find out, first of all, I would like the opportunity, I should say, for the board to ask questions, to discuss it, maybe for Mr. Newmer and Mr. Axtell to address some of their concerns. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to make the board aware that there is such a need. Unfortunately, again, I can't say if it's a week from now, 6 weeks from now, or 6 months from now. But we do know that whenever we make the decision to proceed with something like this, we've got about a month lag time from the time we direct someone to do it to the time that it's online. So it's hard to wait to the last minute. If I knew this thing had 2 more years of life, I wouldn't be coming to you. Unfortunately, I don't know that, and the expert that we consult with can't give us that opinion either. He said, I really can't say how much longer it's going to be stable. At the same time, we do have currently problems with interfacing with the tank, as well as dealing with some false alarms from some of our stations. When we receive a false alarm and we're not able to disable it and restart it, it requires our on-call guys to go out and manually inspect the station. So if Saturday at noon, we get an alarm and we know it's regularly a false alarm, we can't disable it, restart it to see if that's the problem. So we have to pay a fella a minimum of 3 hours, drive out, take a look. Overtime on a Saturday, everything's okay, head on back home. So the problems with the system are causing us some costs. So what I wanted to do was bring before you the proposal of what we have, give the board the opportunity to ask some questions about it, to talk to Mr. Newmer or Mr. Axtell, and then frankly, give me some direction as to what to do next. And the reason why I ask that is this. I have confidence in Mr. Axtell and in Mr. Newmer. They've proved themselves over time to be good technical, advisors to the board. When they come to me and they say, well, we're concerned about this, and we see a genuine need to do something, I have a certain amount of faith in them. We do our internal due diligence, and I say, okay, yep, this is a direction I think we need to lead. Unfortunately, I'm stuck, don't shoot the messenger here. I'd rather not spend 64 grand. But on a daily basis, if one of the department heads that reports to me comes to me and says he's got some serious concerns about our infrastructure, I've got to bring it before this board and get input from this board. So somewhere between today and a couple of years from now, we're going to need to replace this. If I knew it would last a couple of years, I wouldn't be talking to you. But when the time does come that we absolutely have to do it, it's too late because the system has failed. So if this is something we're going to look at, one of the major questions I have is how would this board like to proceed with this kind of a purchase? Meaning that this isn't the same kind of a purchase that fits the mold of going out for competitive quotes. Now, let me pause there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting competitive quotes on a server, for example. The software is the software. I can go online and purchase the software. So purchasing the software is a non-competitive part of the process. There's no deal on the software. Purchasing servers, they can be purchased. What we're paying for, that's a significant part of this, is the knowledge and expertise of our system and the incorporation of our system into the software and basically getting it running pretty smooth. That's where the cost comes in. And that's a very difficult thing to competitively quote. So we can competitively quote half of this, or a significant portion of this, software and hardware. The technical help in getting it all online and running is the part of that process that we really need to look towards someone that we have a level of confidence in. And it's the kind of thing where sometimes a competitive quote can get you a low bidder, and 6 months from now, you're further behind than you were before because that person doesn't have the expertise. We already have someone that we have a deal of respect for, and they've worked on our system for a few years. With that said, I don't know if there's a whole lot to, I've covered a lot of this. I don't know what the board's feedback is. I don't know, Mr. Newmer, if you have something to add, or Mr. Axtell?
I think at this point, maybe we're better off to just respond to questions that the board has, and we can input our comments as the discussion goes along.
Sure. Mr. Axtell, anything, or good with that?
I feel the same, and I'll make a statement at the end of.
Sure. So, I've tried to paint a picture of where this system is currently. And I don't know how great the need is, but I know that when the need becomes 100%, it's too late. And half of this, not literally half, probably greater than half of this, is something that we can competitively quote. making a decision to go with the Ignition software, which is a pretty standardized thing. ICS had indicated it's not unique to municipal water and sewer systems. So there are technical folks besides ICS that can service and address issues relative to programming or operating a system utilizing the Ignition software. Again, it's kind of a multi-industry software package. But at some point, we're gonna need to do this, and when that time comes, I'm not comfortable asking the board to go out and competitively quote the technical side of things without having some experience or relationship with the provider.
Is this, excuse me.
Sure.
Is this something where we could do like a, like a qualification-based bidding, where we just do a 2-envelope bid and, look at what they're offering and then look at price separately? I mean, that's sort of what you're saying. I mean, is that's not what, price really isn't the consideration, it's you're looking for that quality.
Right, and the problem, and that would be exactly what I would propose if we didn't have an existing system. The problem is that there's two people that could bid on this. Again, ignoring the hardware and software. If we say, all right, well, we want to hire someone on an hourly basis to take this system and incorporate it, take this new software and hardware and incorporate it into our system. We either have someone who has no experience or knowledge of our system, and we have some limited level of confidence in what they can offer, or we have a contractor that we've dealt with for roughly 3 years. They've proven themselves in terms of solving problems, doing the kind of industrial sleuthing that we need to fix issues with the water tank, as well as the broadcasting between monitoring stations. And it's important to note that this fella came to us through Wade Trim. Wade Trim has a working relationship with them, and they are a preferred subcontractor of Wade Trim. So we have, some of that qualification already in terms of the relationship we had with them. That doesn't mean that there aren't other folks out there that couldn't provide a similar or possibly a greater level of service. But there are also folks out there that could provide a much lower level of service, and the only way I'll know is to put them on the job and find out that our system is not functional.
I just think spending this kind of money would warrant additional bids. I mean, if we, when we talk about it, it says there's multiple vendors offering this, competing systems. If nothing else, I think we should look at it, to do some benchmarking, and we possibly can use that to leverage to maybe get, have the vendor, if we select ICS, to sharpen their pencil. I think that's, that's sort of, business 101 is you need to get some other quotes and then use that as leverage. I mean, it's done every day in the business world.
No question.
We should be doing the same thing.
Right. I felt a much greater level of urgency last week when I'd asked to add this to the agenda than I do this week, because we'd experienced those failures in a short period of time. Again, if I knew that I had 6 months, I wouldn't even brought this to you. The problem is I wouldn't want some catastrophic failure to occur tomorrow and have the board say, well, if you knew this was of such an emergency nature, why wouldn't you have brought it forward? And I'm not saying that, I don't want that to sound like some sort of a threat. No one truly knows the life expectancy of the system. We only know that in recent months it's become less and less stable.
So I understand that.
Right.
But, so if this didn't come to the board for 6 more months, and again, I think we need something, don't get me wrong, but the whole thing is you and your crew would still manage whatever takes place manually or however other means to make sure that, we keep things solid. So, I know it's more manual, it's more labor intensive, I get it. But, for a couple weeks, I don't think that's a big deal.
And again, I agree with that. And what I was hoping that this board might consider is something not unlike the process we went through with some other significant purchases, most recently, say, the ambulance, where, we're kind of asking a group of folks to go out, kind of kick the tires on this, do a little bit of investigation, talk to other communities, look at competing systems to make sure that we've achieved a level of confidence. I guess what I'm looking at is I'm not sure there's one mechanical step-by-step 12-step process we're gonna go through to say, okay, well, we've come to a conclusion. But I recognize that there's a need to do more than just bring this to the board and say, this is what I wanna do. Unfortunately, last Tuesday, I was concerned that we were up against such dire challenges, and that's why I added it. I would much rather do that and then explain to the board the concerns that I share with you. You know, could we get this done for less? Is this the best system? By all measures that I know today, yes, I think this is a genuine, decent proposal, and I think it's competitive. But I'm not 100% certain that we're counting on those experts to get there. If we were in trouble, if the system were down, and we said we've got to act immediately, this is what I would do based on what the experts have counseled us. I just don't know what that is. But in order to get there, I'm saying I would appreciate a little bit of help so that there might be some other board members, if we were to, again, form a subcommittee of a couple of folks that would join me, or if it doesn't involve me, that's okay too. Go through this process of kind of kicking the tires, looking at other municipalities, considering other systems. The fellow from ICS, as recently as probably a half hour before we walked over, we were on the phone with him, and he apologized. He said, I would normally add more detail to my proposal, but I'm doing it on my iPad from vacation. He says, I'm trying to do the best I can. So, and I respect that. I appreciate that he gave us that response when he was, obviously the guy's on vacation. But the flip side is, I recognize that the board would probably like to see a greater level of detail or breakdown or a comparison to some other systems. I respect that. The problem is this isn't gonna be something where we can say, well, let's type up a fancy letter, mail it to 10 guys and get all their bids back and just pick the one we like. This isn't that kind of a purchase. It's a little bit, I think it's a little more involved than that, and that's why I'm asking the board. That's why I didn't want to table it. I wanted the board to give me some direction so that we can bring something back that the board would have a level of confidence in. And so that more than just me is sitting at this table saying, yep, I've looked into it and this is something we gotta do. I didn't have the time to do that since last Tuesday. But if we're gonna take a little bit of time, let's do it as quickly as we can. And maybe, someone would be willing to go along with that. Maybe if that's palatable to the board, that's what I'm looking for.
Is there anyone that'd be interested in serving it? I mean,
Well,
maybe Darren
That's
makes
what I'm
sense as
asking,
your department oversees IT, and if maybe a trustee or.
Well, the original SCADA that we put in, my office did, John and I.
The one before that? The replacement for the
No, the
SCADA.
one that we have installed right
So it's
now.
not the original, the one we have right now.
This one
This
that we have
upgrade,
right
most
now. and
recent
as-
upgrade
as a
from
matter of
06.
As a matter of fact, I dug up all the old bids. So we have 5 or 6 companies that we know of that bid on the original SCADA system. Now, obviously, the software is probably gonna be a little different, but I mean, we can at least get some type of comparison or benchmark at least. And
absolutely.
whether we go with this or not, maybe this is the best option at the end of the day. Is it the best option at 65,000? I don't know. Is it the best option at 60? I really, honestly don't know.
Absolutely.
If this were broke out a little bit, you'd get more of a sense of what we're talking about here.
Yep.
Well, but would you, unless you have a comparison?
And let's say this is before you because as of Tuesday, the situation seemed dire. And I said, well, I'd rather not come to you and say, I don't know what to do. And we do have confidence in a lot of the things that we've put before you. I can't say that I'm 100% certain that there isn't a competing software that's half price that does just as much. I can't say that. I'm counting on those experts. I did ask Dave, because he does deal with other municipalities, and in terms of, is this, ballpark-wise, where do these numbers fall? And I think that, I'm going to ask Dave maybe to share a little bit on that, because that was one of the questions I had. Where does this line up with what you've seen in other communities, or what, the cost compared to the level of service?
For comparison, we're doing a project right now in East China Township where we're rehabilitating about 1/3 of their wastewater treatment plant. And part of that work involves replacing the SCADA system. That community, like many others that I work in, has tended to build up a relationship with the SCADA contractor over time. And rather than putting it out for open bids, they said to me, we want to use our guy, because our guy knows our system and our guy knows what we do, and we have faith and we have trust in him. So I will tell you that three of the communities that I've worked in recently that have done SCADA work have all gone to their preferred provider and asked them for pricing on it, to give them the information. I'll tell you that on an order of magnitude, the price that you've gotten is about what I would expect for software and hardware for a SCADA system. We're getting about the same numbers in East China on that project. We just did one a couple years ago in Van Buren Township, very similar type numbers. So when Ken said to me, we're looking at a $65,000 investment, I said, yeah, that's about right. So rule of thumb.
Sure. And again, there's layers of, due diligence that we all want to go through before we make an expense. Again, and I apologize for being redundant, when I thought our back was up against the wall, I believe that what I brought before the board was a very reasonable and realistic proposal, knowing that we have the potential for more time. Maybe a little more investigation reveals to us that this is a great deal. I'm not 100% confident. I know we're not getting ripped off, and I know the guy knows what he's talking about. I just don't know how far we have to go into that process before the board is comfortable with the idea of choosing a supplier first and then a product second. And that's where I'm stuck with. Because I'm not comfortable with going to Dave now and saying, you know what, you've built up a relationship with a supplier for 3 years. He's proven himself in problem solving on broadcasting, on tank operational issues, and he's brought our system back when we've had trouble, but we're gonna just go find a completely new guy and put him into the system. I'm not comfortable with that. But I understand that that flies in the face of a lot of the things we do. We say, well, I'm gonna get a roof on my house, so I'm gonna ask 4 guys to come out and quote the roof. Assuming that they're all gonna meet the same standards. This is just not that kind of a project.
And Mr. Marquez, I just want to make it clear, I didn't mean to sound like I think we're getting ripped off.
No, understood.
I think, the whole thing is competitively, I think we should just look at other numbers.
Sure. Agreed.
This vendor may come in a little bit higher. And if it's because of his track record, we still may select them.
Right.
But I mean, when I look at this, some of the questions I have is, you have about $88,000 or $8,800 in annual software fees. But typically, when you buy new software products, first year is free.
It is. It's
Okay,
listed in there.
so then the 8,800, so that's not stated in here.
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
so secondly, you have redundant servers. My other question would be, is how is the second server, how's the maintenance on the second server being allocated? Typically, if it's backup, it only kicks in when you use it as a backup. So I'd like to understand how that works.
Sure.
Okay, because why would you want to pay for software that you never use unless you flip over? If it flips over, then you should use it. That's typically how contracts are written.
Right,
So- so the-
but that
so-
is covered in the software. The software is literally the mission-critical package for $27,000
But is it
does
on-
cover
But is
redundant.
it on 2 servers?
Yes, it is.
So
It's
then my
literally,
question would be, why would we have it redundant on 2 servers if we're not utilizing it? So, again, I
no,
don't
it's
wanna
one
get into-
software package that operates
I-
on 2
I
servers.
understand, but you're paying maintenance, and if you're paying maintenance on both servers.
You're saying, I think they get a license for both, and it's not.
No, it's one license. $4
Right,
grand
but
is
it's-
for,
it's not- it's
$4
not-
grand's the
But,
maintenance for
again,
one
I just need to
license.
understand how that works.
Absolutely,
So it
but,
sounds like you want to volunteer to.
right,
Sir.
but let me say this.
No, I haven't.
Let me say this.
I just want some other pricing. That's
Yeah, I don't blame you.
That's all there is to it.
And my problem is, in this regard, I'm a little bit of mortar between a couple of bricks. Having been a trustee myself, I understand where you say, look, man, you're hitting me with this all at once. I respect that. I also respect when Dave comes into my office, he doesn't come in, looking the way he did last week all the time. He was pretty nervous about how stable that is, because if the thing does go down, there is no manual way to measure those pump stations other than to physically send a guy in a truck for 24 hours a day and drive a circuit and look at 28 pump stations 24/7. And I know we can do it, but at that point I would say, boy, I wish I would have acted a little sooner. So I'm looking for the board to give me direction. Either, for example, A, you say, look, I need more information about this. I need some competitive costs. I need some, lists of municipalities that utilize this supplier, who are some other suppliers, I need more data. Or, and the board may say, and that's good, bring us back all that data and we're gonna look at this again. Or, I need the board to say, you know what, let's form some kind of a subcommittee and go about the task of kind of evaluating this and then bring back a recommendation to the board. Or perhaps there's another or better way to do this.
Fine.
No, that's good.
If what I'm hearing, I think we're all on the same page here, and this is what I was talking about, spending an hour. But, you know, I think we just need to get a little bit more data in the $64,000 quote. Is it, you know, two $27,000 software packages plus 2 servers plus some, okay.
Yeah, no.
And I'm not,
I can answer all those questions, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find out. I find out what the board wants.
Okay, but I think if I hear everybody, why don't we get like a little subgroup? You know, I have the stuff from before. I have all that information from before that. I'm sure that can be helpful.
Yep.
We can just make a few phone calls and get it done, I think, relatively quick before the next board meeting and bring something back. It'll give the gentleman an opportunity to maybe break this quote out a little bit so we understand it a little bit better.
Right.
If that's what I'm hearing, I know I would feel a lot more comfortable even tonight if I had a little bit more of a breakdown.
Right. And for
so-
whatever it's worth, the provider did point out that there's a portion of this that he could competitively quote. In other words, the server side of things, you know, UPS, you know, backup power supplies, battery backups, those are things you can competitively quote. We're not likely to shave $10,000 out of this. But he said that there's a portion of this that's competitively quoted. There's a portion of this that's basically his labor and expertise. That's what I want. I want to make sure that the guy who's in there isn't learning on the fly. I want a guy who's in there that's getting the system up and running. And once we establish that relationship with him, a year from now, when something unique occurs at one of our pump stations, he's got some ownership and investment in this. His firm is familiar with our system, so that he can help us through software upgrades and improvements to the system. So, do we talk about a subcommittee? Is it reasonable to say that the 3 full-timers might do some of this homework and bring it back before the board? I'm looking for some direction from the board to get a feel for what works.
I think that's, you know, probably the best idea, just to get a breakdown more of the cost of what are we actually getting.
Yep.
And like say, Mr. York, again, you know, looking at it 5 to 7, that we get something that all of a sudden, let's spend $73,000 is pretty hard to do without.
Sure.
And like you say, he didn't have the time to give you a detailed explanation of everything.
Right.
So, the 3 full-timers, fine, you know, but
But again, this is a standard software offering. Right.
Correct.
So I guess I don't understand what the problem would be. You know, you don't have to put out an RFP or an RFQ. That's all you gotta do is say, give me a quote. You know, it's
Yeah.
SCADA software, it's support.
There's 2 parts of that. I can get anybody to quote me 2 servers and a UPS. I mean, I can buy
No,
the
but we
software
want-
online.
But we want the package. We
But
want a
the
package.
second half of that is difficult to competitively quote, meaning that the provider of the integration of that to our system is the one that's very difficult. Like Dave had mentioned, frequently, a lot of the other municipalities he represents will first choose that provider and then ask them to provide a system. And that's where I'm struggling. I can competitively quote the software and the hardware. I can't competitively quote that guy because it's hard for me to evaluate whether or not a competitor is going to be as knowledgeable or produce a similar level
They
of
should be. If
service.
they're in the business, they should be.
Well, I think at least for a point of reference, we should have that. So we
Sure.
can say, yeah, this guy's not charging us an arm and a leg more, even,
I'm good with
you know
that.
what I mean? Just,
That's the only thing I'm saying.
I'm good with
Again,
that.
I'm saying, it might be more, it might be less,
Right.
and yeah, this guy, you know, this vendor has been very good, he's worked with our employees and our staff. So I'm not saying we're not gonna choose him, but I
Right.
still think we need those benchmarks.
I agree with that.
So one more question I have.
Yep.
Whatever committee is, first of all, if I could ask Mr. Axtell, iOS products, can you please explain those, and do we have those?
iOS products?
Yes.
yeah, it's the Apple.
Apple.
Okay, so my question would be is, we're talking about mobile access modules.
Right.
My question would be, are we going to get iOS products or Android phones and give those out
We already
to-
have iOS.
Okay, so we have those and everybody, okay. that's all
Not
right.
everyone.
Not everybody.
So-
Actually, I had an accident with my cell phone and it took a swim in the sanitary sewer in a station,
Okay.
and so, and it was long overdue for upgrade, but so now I have a smartphone and I was gonna be the guinea pig. And so that we can do this, you know, and
Okay.
take the alarms to these phones in a greater capacity than we do now. The alarms come to the phone, but it's simply a recording and tells you there's an alarm, and then you either jump in the truck and you take off, and then halfway there it'll call and say alarm is cleared. And so that, as Mr. Verkust was saying, then it becomes, okay, do you trust it, or do you still come down and check the
So
station?
it sends out alerts. My question is, are we going to have to purchase more devices for the staff?
Yes, there would be 2 more smartphones.
Okay, so.
We'd replace current
replacing
cell
the
phones.
existing
So we'd
phones.
take a guy who's got a cell phone, give it to another guy, and give that guy an
But it's a
iPhone.
cost we have to include.
Well,
Yeah,
there-
and not a
it's gonna
significant
be a
one.
minimal addition because there's only 3 people that have cell phones, myself, Mr. Murphy, the foreman, and our on-call person. And
Okay.
that phone rotates between the 9 men. And they would all be able to receive the alarms. And it's an emergency system where it goes to 1 first. If the person doesn't respond in a timely fashion, it goes to the 2nd and to the 3rd, so that it does not get missed.
We already have, shared data on the plan, so it's
Yes.
not really an additional.
I didn't
cost.
see it as a significant investment to go
It's
from
not,
a.
but it
yeah,
still should be part of the quote.
Right.
You know,
At this point, we don't even know how, that level. We haven't got into that, how much function it has. But from what we understand, the ability to do things remotely is gonna well exceed the cost of not only the smartphone itself, but probably the software within a short period of time.
Everything's going that way, and
Right.
you get alerts and redundant alerts, so you don't miss it.
now keep in
Absolutely.
mind, at one point, your predecessor, the assistant gentleman, we had to buy a computer for him to have at his house so he could look at the software. I don't know what happened to that computer. You know how you say you have the text alerts and just the phone? We bought, because
you
the
referring-
union said,
are-
oh, if you want us to be on call, you need to buy us a computer. So we had bought a computer and put the software on it and everything. So once again, to stop the overtime, the person was supposed to have access, it's a VPN setup. Oh, I think we even had wireless. We bought a wireless card for that. Because
Are
the
you-
people, because we got a union grievance because they didn't want to use their own internet connection. So the township had to buy a Verizon card and provide that, but I don't know what happened to that stuff.
Are you referring to the little mini?
Yeah.
Yes, and we did finally get that back from the person, and it is in my office, and that can be utilized as well.
Okay,
once.
well, I mean, I'm
This is
just
all-
saying, I don't
No,
want
believe me.
misinformation here about just a phone call. I mean,
This is all
that system
technology.
isn't like
That's
archaic,
really,
like,
No,
You know,
and I'm not saying that it is, but
academic
even,
at this point.
I mean, it does some things that we're
As-
talking about, oh, it's just a phone. No, it does a lot more than that. We have spent money for computers and things that, quite honestly, haven't been utilized in a couple of years.
and in that aspect, that was before my time, but it's,
I
and I
agree.
understand, but the phones, they give you the alarms, and they tell you what the alarms are, you can respond to them. But the SCADA system that on the screen, the computer itself is a little limited, and with some of the graphics and some of the reports. Those are all things, and that's the same information I received from Clinton Township today. They're in the exact same boat. Those are all things that this would vastly improve. And those are other things, as we've discussed in previous meetings, there would be some additional, say, probably contractual items as to how things are handled once we update to something of this nature. And then I would like to address Mr. Tominello, and in no way do I want this to come across as a scare tactic or anything of that nature, but manually checking the stations is one option, and we've utilized it many times, but, and maybe I am, a little of a worrisome person, but I do worry about this when I go home to go to sleep at night, because you don't know what's happening, and if it fails and something happens to that, 1998, status, it's a very ugly situation. And we can go out and manually check stations. We check them every Friday, and go through a full checklist, but our routine starts on the north side of Bridgeview on North River Road, and we can go to the 3 on North River Road, come across the bridge and go to Coleridge is the 4th station that we check. By the time we hit 3 to 4 more stations, if that SCADA system had failed, Coleridge will be in high water. It's just, that's a force main station. It's the largest station we operate. And like I said, I don't say that to be as a scare tactic, it's just fact. We've had to do that in the past. People, when I was in the field, we've come in on a Saturday and Sunday, you know, when we're not here during the week. 7:30 in the morning, we come in, we check all 18 sanitary stations, go home, come in at 7:30 at night. In that 12-hour span, and you have nothing coming to a phone or to a computer or anything, it's not the greatest feeling in my stomach, you know, it makes me a little wheezy to say the least. And that's the reason that this was sort of rushed. You know, last week, in the 3-hour time span that we were rebooting and manually booting, and I was out lifting hatches and lifting floats to make the switches go off, another station could have went into an alarm system, into an alarm that we were not aware of. And that's where the problem comes. And I understand your reluctance. This is a lot of money. I hope you understand you've put me in this position, and I would not just come to you arbitrarily with, you know, things that, because I want it. It's, you put me in a position, I have a responsibility to you, but not only you, to the residents, and that's where this comes forward.
Yeah, and I think we're dealing with the same issue from different perspectives. There's a certain fiscal responsibility that you want to carry into this, but I'm appreciative of the fact that we have someone in our water and sewer department that understands the urgency of it. You know, every time that we see an agenda item to replace a pump or to, you know, rebuild a motor or, you know, deal with an impeller issue on a pump station, that's a result of a failure. And Dave, you know, lives those failures. So he wants to make sure that, you know, the system is working. So I get his perspective. Again, I also get the idea that the board says, hey, we need a little bit more. We need maybe a snapshot from a couple different angles, you know, numbers wise, maybe some municipal references, things like that. Maybe this fella shows that he competitively quoted one portion of it, gives us his best number. We compare it to a couple other suppliers that do similar things, just to give you a level of confidence that the numbers that we're looking at are in the ballpark. So I get that.
And the servers are the servers.
Correct.
I mean, you have 3 ways. You can either, you know, normally when I go for servers, Jason quotes it. We call our guy in, because we have a government account. We call him. We have a direct connection at Dell, and then we also sometimes are running the sales. Sometimes you can get it better just doing it as a residential, you know, customer going through their website if they're having a sale.
Sure.
But servers are servers, you know, with markups on that.
I mean, it sounds to me like this product that we're looking at, it's pretty similar to the ambulance. There's a specific technology that's involved. There's specific consultants, if you will, that know their products. And then there's also, on the flip side, hardware and some software that's pretty much off the shelf.
Right.
I mean, you know, with the ambulances, that's why I support what Larry's suggesting. You know, we saw a lot of different,
Yeah.
a lot of different results.
Powertrains,
from-
things like that.
Oh man, I mean, we heard so many different results from different vendors, and some of them seemed to be on the up and up, some of them not so much. And end result was you kind of lean on the person that you feel like is going to provide the best service and the best sort of relationship for the department in this case. But you know, ambulances are just as technical as something like this.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was a lot of money. This is a lot of money, and I think we need to look at not so much the potential sense of urgency. I mean, I couldn't speak for anybody else, but I wouldn't base my decision on a sense of urgency. I'd base it on whether or not we looked and reviewed and addressed every aspect of this quote before we made a decision.
Sure, fair enough.
Because this may never be a sense of urgency. It may be a sense of urgency a week from now. We don't have a crystal ball, so we don't
Correct.
know. I think we should just make a decision based on what's the right decision, not based on what could potentially happen.
Right.
An asteroid could hit this building and none of this would matter. So.
That's right.
Make a motion to direct the 3 full-time officials to investigate the replacement of the water SCADA sewer system to be brought back at a future board meeting.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. York. Is there discussion?
I'm hoping that we can get this done fairly quickly.
I think we
Like,
can.
We have 13 days
real
till our
quick.
till our next meeting, so
Like real
I
quick.
hope we could make it for the next meeting.
Sure, sure,
Maybe we can get some brochures,
absolutely.
some things, and bring it to the board.
Yeah, I know we can put an agenda item forward Monday, but we'll just bring you the information, 2 weeks from now, right before the meeting. Just a little humor there for you, just kinda see, caught that. We've got a
Come on,
motion.
it's a lot of money, we just,
No, it's legit. I'm a little brevity there. A motion, that's been, by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. York to direct the 3 full-timers to, do a little research on the system and bring it back to a future board meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda is item B2, which was originally B1, regarding BSNA software. Mr. Witt?
Yeah, this is an item to purchase a new piece of software called Timesheets, and it allows the electronic input of hours worked and that kind of stuff for, and then it will then integrate with our payroll system. In the end, what it'll do is streamline how the data gets inputted, because currently, people will put their time in a timesheet, print it off, hand it into payroll, and then payroll then takes what they printed off after putting it in the computer and then puts it back into the computer. So there's a lot of duplication and effort right there. So individuals will be responsible for putting their own hours in the computer, and then it'll automatically populate after a department head electronically signs off on it. It'll just be sent right over to payroll, so it'll streamline that process. And this was brought forward because the fire department is looking at doing an electronic scheduling program, because right now they use a giant paper book to schedule everything. And this will interface with whatever software that they purchase down the road. So the cost estimate for this was, $94.50. But that includes 2 days of training. I'm not sure if we're gonna need both days of the training. They're $1,100 a day. We might come in underneath that, but that $94.50 is at the upper limit. So,
I make a motion to approve the proposal from BSA Software for the implementation of the timesheets program.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado. Discussion, board members?
I just have one question, I guess. I assume that there's some employees that don't have access to a computer?
no,
Or
everyone.
do they all have access?
We would all have access.
Yep.
Yeah, even
All
like
the
water and sewer guys,
and-
there's a computer at the shop that they can use, or.
Yep. And this really avoids some of that,
Yeah.
kind of the error, in reporting, so, kind of put us all in, digital. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is, item C1 from the clerk's office.
Yes, this item is the adoption of resolution number 1 for Siesta Park, Sunnybrook Park, and Fresh Air Park Canal Special Assessment District for the removal of accumulated sediment and aquatic weeds. We were approached by a group of residents in that neighborhood that they would like to clean out their canal to create more navigable water depth, and they brought forward a process with a single vendor they wanted to use, where basically what they do is they vacuum out the accumulated sediment that's suspended in the water column to get back down to that original hard pan to create a more readily usable canal. So as part of that special assessment process, we held an informal meeting in January of this year. And then the residents picked up petitions, went out and collected signatures. We validated that there were 56% approving of the project, so it has enough signatures to move forward. So at this time, we'd be offering resolution number 1, which accepts the petitions. And although it directs the engineer to prepare the improvements, those are already done. So after that, we also have resolution number 2 tonight, which will set the date for the public hearing at our June 10th meeting. That is an opportunity for the residents to come forward during the public hearing of necessity, to be able to comment on it. So, we already have dates set up with Macomb Daily and the advisor to publicly notice that per the law. The letters will go out in the mail to the affected property owners tomorrow, should the board approve it. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the project, or,
Can we do both motions at once, Mr. Huth, or do we need to do them separately?
Separate motion, roll call, please.
Make a motion to adopt the foregoing resolution number 1 for Siesta Park, Sunnybrook Park, and Fresh Air Park Canals Aquatic Sediment Removal SAD project as presented.
you know, before, there's just,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, there was one correction that Mr. Capel had noticed in there.
Well, first, can I make sure I have the support? Was it
Support.
Mr. Tominello?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the second page in the, I guess it's the third paragraph down of that resolution, regarding the specifications for it should have project after that, it got cut off. Where it says where the engineer is asked to get an estimate of cost and collect data, that one, at the end of it, it should just have project on the first resolution.
Collect data from the appropriate sources? Oh, regarding specifications for
Oh,
the comma.
project.
Yeah, for the project, sorry.
All right. Who typed this up?
You know,
I was gonna propose maybe as a punishment for
I
the
hate-
clerk's office, you should have to read these resolutions out loud.
It's all right.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to adopt the resolution. If there's any public comment, we'll open the floor for public comment. Any board discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. York,
Yes.
Mr. Tominello.
Yes.
Mr. Brado,
Yes.
Mr. Capral,
Yes.
Mr. Swikowski.
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Is there another motion tonight?
Make a motion to adopt the foregoing resolution number 2 for Siesta Park, Sunnybrook Park, and Fresh Air Park Canals Aquatic Sediment Removal SAD project as presented.
Support.
Support by Mr. Swikowski. Any no known corrections to that?
No.
All right. Any discussion, board members? And if there's any public comment? No? All right.
Is there any opposition to this?
Very little.
I mean, honestly, I've been through some of these SAD, and normally there's
We've
at
had
least a
extra
few
time.
people.
We've had a lot of field dredging
It'll come
projects
up
in the
with that.
past,
It's
but this
fine.
one had
That's
a ton
fine, I
of
just
support. And even though he said 56% got validated, we turned in
lot.
like 77%.
Yeah,
Oh,
a lot of the
okay.
signatures that didn't come through was for technical reasons, whether it was they were maybe, when you're doing the special assessment, when you're doing the verification of signatures, you have to make sure that both signatures, whether husband and wife are on there, match exactly, so there were numerous signatures that for whatever reason couldn't be validated, but there was significant interest beyond that 56%.
I've never
Once you
seen
hit
it said
50,
where
once you
there's
hit
not.
51, you're okay,
We-
but
there's
there
a
was
cushion.
definitely a sign that a much greater percent of the residents were in support of it.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask. Normally, there's people that are in opposition, and
Well-
I don't see them, so.
Well, there's always somebody, but when it comes right down to it, we have very little say in the matter as a board. This is really a decision by the
Yep.
taxpayers in that particular subdivision.
Well, we still have the public hearing on the 10th, so maybe they'll show up then.
That could be. All right. Well, if there's no further discussion, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. York,
Yes.
Mr. Swikowski.
Yes.
Mr. Brado,
Yes.
Mr. Capral.
Yes.
Mr. Tominello.
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkest.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item D1 from the Treasurer's Office. Mr. York?
This is an item that was brought back from the last board meeting, and regarding the bumping that went on. We had 2 internal candidates, and we chose Cinda Covert to replace Lucy Iato in the Treasurer's Office. And this, we didn't put a date on here because we still don't know what day all this is going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, that effective date is still dependent on, further bumping and
When the
slotting.
person retires and things like that.
But the 3 full-timers have discussed it, and we know that we'll be able to manage it with the minimal amount of disruption to township operations.
And I will say, I don't know, Mr. Verkest brought this up about this 30-day trial period. I'll have to look at the union contract and see what the requirements are, but the normal.
Well, the tricky part is this is a voluntary reduction in a position. It's from one level to a slightly lower pay level. So the contract is not as specific. The contract, let's say this, the contract is specific about lateral moves from one department to another for the same job classification, and the contract addresses the issue of promotions. The question is whether or not this, as a voluntary move from one position to another position for lower pay, is really considered a promotion, a transfer, you know, what it's called. Having said that, I think none of us expect that Ms. Covert will do anything other than a great job in the treasurer's office.
She worked for us for a couple years.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the transfer of Cinda Covert to the account bookkeeper in the treasurer's office, subject to a 30-day trial period.
Got a motion by Mr. Switkowski. Is there support? Support by Mr. Camperl.
Do we want to put on there anything about the start date or?
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's something that, you know, that we
That'll
can
be
manage.
handled internally by now.
Absolutely, yep. The contract allows for, once that decision's made, it allows for, I don't wanna say like 60 or 90 days that we have to make it effective, so I think there's some latitude there.
Well, we got to worry about the building department and,
Sure.
you know, before she moves over. And
Absolutely.
so.
Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda, item E1, inspection fees. Board members, permits for new home construction have increased in the last 2 years after a period when almost none were issued. Recently, during an inspection, our mechanical inspector noticed a discrepancy in the number of mechanical vents indicated on the permit application, which was 1, versus the number of actual mechanical vents on the home, which was 8. Our fee schedule indicates that the fee per vent, inspection fee per vent, is $40. The inspector and contractor pointed out that that fee is quite high compared to some neighboring municipalities. Our mechanical inspector is part-time. He works in 2 other communities. In those communities, the fee per vent is $5 and $15. Excuse me. And Michigan adopted new fees at the state level effective April 1st. Their fee is $25 per vent. Therefore, I'm proposing that we reduce the fee for inspection per vent to $20 per vent for all new permits. Once our building official is able to return from his leave, he can offer another solution if necessary.
I make a motion to revise the fee for mechanical vent inspection to $20 per vent, effective on open permits.
Support.
Oh, hold, yeah, effective on open permits,
No, for all new permits.
right?
Well, I mean, if somebody already has a permit and haven't done any installation, how do you, I mean,
If he applied,
They
or
pulled it already.
Well, yeah,
It's not inspected yet.
if he applied for the penny pays permit upon acceptance.
right, so
You
let,
can't
let,
really say
well, I mean,
no.
if the see, this is the issue, all right? Now, and Ken and I argued this, but I feel
I don't
differently
recall
than.
even discussing this with
Yeah,
you.
we did. We got into a big argument like 2 weeks ago at the staff meeting. This is the deal, all right? The gentleman goes in there, and I feel we're getting ripped off. Obviously, other people didn't. If you put on there, vent, there's an empty box, right? For number of vents times 40.
Yep,
You put 1 in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inspector goes out there. In this case, there was 8 vents,
correct,
right? For $320.
correct.
Well, the contractor should have put 8 vents in there.
Correct.
That wasn't our doing. That's fraud on his part.
Correct.
That's not on my part. And,
Right,
and
but let me clarify.
I had a
At
question
this-
on that particular item. I mean,
But let me clarify on that point. So, for all open permits, that contractor owes us $40 per vent. The fact that he indicated 1 is not the final say. The inspector went out and said, wait a minute, you've indicated 1 and you've paid us $40. And as a matter of fact, looking back, you've indicated 1 on several permits that are closed and you only paid us $40. But on the 5 permits that you happen to have open, you indicated 1, but the number was closer to 8. So in fact, you owe us $320. The guy said, well, I don't like that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, that's the permit. I can change it moving forward, but the cost that you owe is $40 per vent.
Right.
So I don't want to change it. I'm not saying this is a retroactive thing. We'd ask this very question to Mr. Huth, whether or not we would change fees retroactively.
I'm not saying retroactive, but what I'm saying is that, you know, if I put in my house, right, that I have one vent, and the guy comes out and, yeah, you missed 20 of my houses that I built. You know what? Hey, guess what? I guess the township eats that, and, you know, shame on us, right? But if we have open permits
5 of them.
that are, you know, $20 per vent,
No.
the guy got
They're
caught.
40. He filled it out. The paperwork says 40. He
Okay,
owes
but we're
40.
changing
At
it
the
to
time
20.
the permit was pulled, that's the fee schedule you should be observing.
Correct.
My question is, Mr. Supervisor, if I can,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to know, are these mechanical flood vents? Is that what we're talking
No,
about here?
this would be typically, say, a bathroom vent.
Okay.
That
That's
might
all I
be
need to
one,
know.
could be another
Well,
appliance.
But are mechanical flood vents included?
No. No, this is a mechanical, that's a building, this is a mechanical vent mechanical as we talk of plumbing and mechanical,
Okay, that's
an
fine.
appliance.
That's fine.
So this is the issue, right? What do you do with
5 open permits. The guy owes us $40.
$40. That's what I would say.
And that's what I told him. And
But-
when that contractor complained to me, I says, look, you got a deal on a bunch of homes. I'm sorry. It said $40. There's 8 vents. You owe $320.
That's the way it is, all right? But I have no problem charging those the 20. I'm trying to get that situation resolved right
But
now.
when we do that, then, you know, we're gonna open ourselves
far do you
up,
go
right? I
back?
mean, what do you do?
Why don't we go all the way back?
You had to draw a
Yeah,
line somewhere.
I mean-
Well,
Yeah,
well, let me ask
You
you.
go back
all right,
far
all
enough,
right.
maybe I pulled the permit and you can
Well,
change the price for
no,
that one.
No.
Does it-
Well, let me
Just a
ask you
question
this.
on the actual verbiage, because the way it's written here,
It says new permits, so
That was per
means-
the advice of our attorney.
no, but it says, the fee per vent inspection is $40. Now, if you took an overall view, you could say, well, I'm gonna get all my vents inspected once, $40.
Right.
Or does it say $40 per
The
vent?
application
Times-
literally reads a
vent.
device or an appliance, whether it's a sink, whether it's whatever it is, and then it has a blank spot where you fill in number of devices, and then there's an amount per device. So this
Okay.
same contractor may have come to another item, and I'm just gonna make it up and say maybe it was toilets. And he put down 3 toilets times $20, and he filled in 60. He put in 8 mechanical vents, but he put down 1 times 40 equals 40. When the inspector in the past had gone out, he inspected the mechanical vents, found that they were all in order, and didn't notice that the amount of vents was indicated improperly. That horse is out of the barn. Moving forward, I believe 40 is an unreasonable number. So I looked at what other communities have as a standard, what the state has. I'm asking to change it to 20. But to say that we're gonna retroactively change it was a question I addressed to the attorney. The advice from Mr. Huth was to say it's for all new permits moving forward.
So
Okay.
if the motion passes tonight, beginning tomorrow, any permits that are pulled at inception
As of May 29th.
Correct.
will be at the $20.
Okay,
But the,
so
but
let
the
me ask
motion
you-
that Mr. York made was different, and it was not
Well, then let
seconded.
me ask you this, With the current situation where the gentleman went out and he put 1 and there's 8, are we charging him the 320?
He owes for 4.
Okay,
he owes
okay, then
$40
that's fine.
times.
All right,
Yeah,
all right.
Things
Yeah.
change
Then I'll
in the
change my
field, you
motion
know.
then. I'll
Somebody
change my
may have
motion.
gone, they were
All right,
gonna
all
do a
Okay.
recirculator in their kitchen.
Plus it's a separate
And in the
issue.
field, they
giving the guy a
decide
break.
to go
I was
out
trying
to
to
do
give
an
the guy a
exterior. That would be a
break.
vent that they have to pay for.
Absolutely.
So
Somebody,
things change, and
someone
that's
could
something
buy
that
a home and then
inspectors-
say, you know, I decided to add a gas-fired fireplace,
There you go.
and you add a vent. And the inspector
So it's
says, well,
gonna
that
have-
wasn't on the plans.
so
It changes.
It comes
But
in-
you don't get it for one price. You
comes
gotta
into
pay per.
Inspection enforcement.
Right. So we've got a motion that was not
All right,
supported,
I'll
but,
go ahead and change my motion
but
to.
if you could, before you do, motion to adopt, it has to be done by
Motion
resolution.
to adopt a resolution to revise the fee for mechanical vent inspection to $20 per vent, effective immediately for all new permits.
Yep.
I apologize, I didn't realize that other issue had been resolved
That's
since
all right.
we talked last.
Yeah, well, it was a done deal. I told the fella, I know you don't like it, but
okay.
that's the rate.
Well, that's
There's a
fine.
motion by Mr. York. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Brado. All right, discussion, board members? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Serville, resident. While I understand what you're doing here, I believe that These vents that we're talking about are usually inspected on a rough inspection. Mechanical inspector will typically do 2 inspections. In order to get in there, it costs us X amount of dollars. So I think the first vent should be more money than the rest of them. But $25 a vent, when you're talking about something that when he walks around, takes him less than a minute to look at, you end up with 8 times 25 is still $200, and the man's gonna be there 10 or 15 minutes. I think that's excessive. The state law says we only can charge our cost. So I think you ought to look at it differently and then determine what actually is a vent. Sometimes something like a gas appliance, a gas-only fireplace, that could be construed to be a vent, but it's an appliance. And there's a permit fee to install that appliance. If you have a B vent that goes up to, if you have a normal furnace or water heater, it's vented through a B vent normally, which is a double wall pipe for gas only. That takes some time for him to inspect that. He has to do the math to make sure it's the right size, check the height. The permit fee for that should be more money. I'm not sure what's included in here, but what I'd suggest is that you make the fee for the first one, maybe stay at $40 for the first one, and then make it like $10 for the rest of them. And I might add, as you know, I'm a builder, retired builder. Many times, take a hose bib for instance. Plumbing code requires 1 hose bib on the outside of the house. When I'm pulling a permit, the house isn't sold yet. So I pull a permit for 1. Then the customer comes along and says, well, gee, I want one back there. Okay, my plumber says it's gonna cost you $75. So put it in, the inspector comes and he sees there's 2 hose bibs. He writes on there, typically I've had this happen numerous times, you're approved, but you have to go pay for X amount, whatever it might be. Electrical inspector, same thing. You don't know how many circuits. I may be pulling the permit because the other guy can't get there that day and I need the permit. You put down 10 circuits because that's the minimum, but maybe it ends up being 18 circuits. The onus is on your inspector to check for this stuff. If somebody skated by, that's because the inspector wasn't doing his job, whoever it might have been. But I still say you should make it first one fee, the rest of them much less than 25. That's too much money. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. I understand the residents' concern. When I looked over our existing form for application for mechanical permit, as well as the state's form, and I don't disagree with the resident from one perspective. The problem is nowhere did I see any other pattern or example where there was a stepped fee. Let's make sure we understand. We may be talking about this in a month. Mr. Parak is expecting to return to work, and he may have a very good explanation. But in the interim, the best expert that we have working for the township is our mechanical inspector. I asked him, from your experience, he's retired from another community. He works a part-time in several communities. How do you handle this? He said, number of vents times the amount listed, and that's what I charge. That is the fee schedule. So when I looked at anywhere from 5, 15 to 25, I tried to split that, call it $20. We may not even have somebody pull a permit in the next month for a new home. This generally affects new homes. But if we do, we can say that as a board, we've tried to address it. Mr. Parak may come back and tell us, well, actually, no, I use this standard and make some reference to something we're not familiar with. But in the interim, $40 times the number of events seems high. I'm just asking the board to rise it to 20. So that's the best experts we have to advise us. Is there any other board comment? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado to adopt a resolution to revise the fee for mechanical vent inspection to $20 per vent, effective immediately for all new permits. Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call? Nope, 20.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Swikowski?
Yes.
Mr. Tominelli?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Burkowski?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. For reference, the state standard is $25 That's what they have on their application that's available online, so. Next on our agenda is item E2, a resolution honoring the Belgian American Century Club and its 100th anniversary. Hopefully this evening, the following resolution would be adopted. Whereas the Belgian American Century Club was founded 100 years ago in Detroit by 5 men as a fraternal benefit society to provide financial assistance to the survivors of a deceased member, and whereas the Belgian American Century Club is comprised today of over 150 men of Flemish lineage proud to be United States citizens, and whereas the Belgian American Century Club has grown into a social club still meeting monthly, sharing their common traditions, serving and celebrating the Flemish American community throughout southeastern Michigan, and whereas the Belgian American Century Club continues to support Flemish history, the Flemish language, and Flemish traditions, including frugality, and whereas the Belgian American Century Club is celebrating their 100th anniversary on October 26, 2013. And now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to congratulate the Belgian American Century Club on reaching this significant milestone and wish them another 100 years of success.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the resolution as presented.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Swakowski with support by Mr. York. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Swakowski?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capro?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkowski?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comments and board comments. We'll open the floor for public comment.
Bill Serville, resident. I believe it was earlier this week, but it might have been last week. There was an article in the Macomb Daily concerning Roseville, the city of Roseville, and their single trash hauler. Seems as though Roseville is ecstatic about saving $200,000 over 5 years on a $9 million contract. A total of, for 5 years, it's a total of $40,000 a year. And they were really ecstatic about this, and they're bragging in the newspaper how they saved a lot of money for the residents. And it makes me think back, not too long ago, you people passed up $815,000 over 3 years. And I'm just reminding you again, you should be ashamed of yourself about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Board members? If there's
Everybody have
no,
a good evening.
if there's no board comment, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn this evening.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr.
Support.
York with support by Mr. Tominello to adjourn at 8:31. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Yeah, it's going that phone, those things.